All right, guys, so first things first, as far as the mask or the front part of the helmet, I'm not too concerned about these two parts because these sanded out like, not even sand these yet, these just printed out pretty good. So I'm not worried about layer lines. I'm not too worried about sanding with these. These are probably just 220 in the wet and dry sandpaper, and that'll probably be it for these. And of course, filler primer. But I'm really super impressed with how these two came out. But as far as the dome, as you know, I printed this upside down. So two things happened. I left it purposely in the video. I like to show some failures that happen so that way you guys can learn from it. But printing upside down, my printer wasn't level, and I think I need to add a little bit more oil to my Z-rods, because you can see like at a certain point it started to shake. And what that caused was just like a little bit of, probably won't be able to see that because it's black, but it pretty much messed up right there a little, and I had to stop the print a little earlier. But besides that, with printing anything upside down, you'll always get like these layer lines here at the top. Now I did make a video on how to smooth rough prints and pretty much how to knock that down. I'll leave the link for that video in the description below, so definitely check that out. Let's go through it. I'm gonna have to break out the old 60 grit. I haven't used that in a while. Pretty much to knock all of this stuff down. I cut off already most of like the support material, wasn't too hard on there. Clippers that come with the printer pretty much help you with that. So I just snipped off everything that was big, and now I'm gonna get to sanding. Let's get to it. So as far as the 60 grit, I got 1/2 done, which obviously you can tell, and then the other side that's still rough. So same I did in my other video, just running my finger over, or you can just hear like all the layer lines and all the crust and everything in between. And then on this side, nice and smooth. Again, the sanding block, some people do use a palm sander. I have not. I guess the one thing that you want to do if you're using a palm sander is first make sure that you have enough infill, because this is plastic. Palm sander is moving via vibration, so that friction is going to cause heat to your print, which could either melt it, warp it, or just completely start to shred. So just be careful when you're doing that. Make sure the print is a lot thicker, so that way you can run over it and get like a lot easier of a pass. If you don't want to invest in a palm sander, definitely invest in a sanding block. These are like $4 or $5. As you see, it fits nicely in your hand, and I'm pretty much getting into the grooves. But the main thing that you want to focus on when taking out layer lines is starting off with a very high grit. Again, this is 60, just to really knock everything down and really get all that junk out the way. Again, I always use these cutters first, just to cut. So these squares were like the old supports, after breaking the supports off. Some of those are still there, so I had to break that off. I want to pretty much cut anything off that's going to make my life easier when doing this. So if I kept those big squares on there, that would make it a lot harder, because then I'd have to work down those squares. So just clipping off any of these like small little layer hairs that you see within there definitely helps. Within the lines, again, you could definitely get in there with the sanding block with the edge. It's like a little sharp, not really sharp, but you could work it out in there to really help out that. Only thing with using these high grits is if you're printing something with a lot of detail, which this doesn't have, you just want to be careful, because that will pretty much erase all of your detail with using something this strong. So just be careful. Again, this I expect to happen because I've printed several helmets upside down, the Mandalorian, Magneto, the list goes on. So I already know this is going to happen. This is just my process to taking care of it. So if you have a print that you think might have came out terrible or might have failed, don't worry. There's always a way to fix it. There's always a solution. It just takes a little bit more work. All right. So after about 30 minutes and a full bicep workout, your print will start to look like this. A lot more smooth. All that crust and nonsense is gone off the top. And this is why I'll print it upside down, because it doesn't really take much to fix it back to where I want it. But again, the main thing that I want to think about is there a lot of detail on the helmet? So if there's a lot of detail on the helmet, then I'm going to have to figure something else out. Again, I like to do it like this, because doing it like this, there's a lot more support that's going to go into it. A lot more support material that you may need, so on and so forth. You may say, well, why would that need support material if it was printed like this? Because it actually wasn't. It was actually going to be like this. And then I had some supports. I was going to have some supports coming from here. But again, that just takes too much. Another thing, since I just mentioned that, is that this was actually a failed print. As you can see, these two do match up. So everything as far as like the connection part is good. But just like I mentioned, you've seen a lot of wobble in a part of the print. So instead of making the rest of the print kind of come out like this and look like really bad, and me just being lazy, I stopped the print. And then on my slicer, I actually used, which is a very good thing to take note of. If you ever have a failed print, but your print is still good, look at where the print stopped at on the Z-axis. That's gonna tell you a lot. So what I was able to do is pretty much see, I think it was like 172, where I stopped this print at. So pretty much what I did is went into slicer. Even with the helmet like this, I could have just flipped it over in Cura and just moved it under the bed. I'll show you guys that a little bit more visually. But pretty much I just found out where it stopped at on the Z-axis, put that into this, and made the rest of it. And now I just have to solder the two parts together. So there are always ways to get around things, especially in 3D printing. There's never really a failure, because pretty much you're gonna have to go through all of this sanding and prep work anyway. Again, it's just gonna be a little bit more if something bad happens. So there's always a way to flip something over and overcome something. So if you notice that, hey, my whole print came out good, but just this little piece stopped, instead of doing that whole process over, wasting all of that filament, just take a little bit of information, put 2 and 2 together, save your print. Million times better. And that's just pretty much like my phase 1. In any of my builds, I wanted to get to look like something. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I want it to look like something. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to at least like knock off all the bad stuff and at least get it to something decent. And then from here, it's just pretty much building up on top of that. So from here, it's going to be bondo, filler primer, more bondo, more filler primer, more, no, I'm just kidding. That Stone Cold Steve Austin, he's like, more beer, more liquor. But the next process that I have to do now is welding these two parts together. So taking two and making them one. To do that, there are different ways to PLA weld. Pretty much all I do is just get it warmed up, align everything, and then I'll duct tape on certain points so that way it doesn't like shake or move or anything like that. And for the most part, you can get away with it by just soldering the inside and pretty much just making like little X's and marks. From the inside, you can get a lot more rough as far as like the welding of two parts, but on the outside, again, for your detail, you wanna be like a little more careful so that way you're not burning through your detail or anything like that. But like me, I'm a little bit more visual, so let's get to it. Now, using the magic of time lapse, I'm gonna show you how I line these up, put them together, and then solder. So stay tuned. I'm just gonna line it up right now. You may notice me struggle a bit. Not as bad as I thought. The only main thing that you want to make sure when doing this is by touch you'll notice is to make sure that not only does it line up, but that the edges are pretty much on the same surface. So you want it, like, I'm a carpenter, so what we say is make it plumb or make it flush. That means that I can run my finger over and there's not like a speed bump or anything like that. I want to be able to move my finger over, and from this surface to this surface, it's flat. All right, and now basically from here, got the soldering iron nice and warm, and like I said, I'm gonna go to the inside and pretty much really try to melt these two parts together. I'm trying to get these two O's, as you can see, how this top half is a little bit that way and the bottom half is a little bit that way. That's what I mean about making it flush and making it plumb. I don't want any of that. I want it to be consistent, so that way you can't even tell that this is two parts pretty much. From the inside, it's kind of hard to do and show you guys, but I'm going to try to do my best. So here we go. helped you guys at least give you a visual image of just pretty much how to line something up and just go on the inside or outside and pretty much just melt the plastic over on itself. And I know I said I would start on the inside, and you guys see me clearly start on the outside. It just kept sliding the helmet a little back and forth, so what I did was just take this little notch right here, line that up. I find that it's best to get the middle locked in first, and then you could like move and adjust the sides and then go from there. That's pretty much what I did, just made sure that was locked in, and then I went on the inside and pretty much just started bracing everything together. That's one way that you can solder. Another is what I can do is I can take a little bit of this filament, same filament that I was printed with, except this is green, this is black, and within certain spots I can put the filament here, like this little gap right here. You can see this little line right here. I can put the filament in there and then take the soldering iron and pretty much melt it in like that. Or I can do that on a bigger scale and use some of the raft that it's printed out on. I did this method on, I think it was the Power Ranger helmet, one of the Power Ranger helmets, or it was, I think it was the Mandalorian. If you check out the Mandalorian video, as I'm soldering together, there's like a big hole or a big gap. So I pretty much put the raft right in the spot, melt it all in, and then of course buff it down with the sandpaper, so on and so forth. So those are just two other tips and tricks that you can do to solder rather than just using this. You can get a little bit more creative and fill some gaps in, which is what I'm going to do now. So I used a different color filament, that way you can just see it a little bit easier. Basically, you can see that hole where you can see my red sweater coming through, but where the filament is, you cannot. So once you start to heat it up, you can probably see as I was doing it, it starts to make it like a little waxy kind of form. So that way it's like easier to patch and fill in. Because I don't want any of those holes. Or another way, just like I said, just put the raft on the inside and just go to work from the inside. All right, and now what was once 2 is now 1. Dude, this thing is gonna be amazing. I'm printing out the rings now. You can probably hear the printer going for the ring caps that go in here, so that way this sits better, or how it's supposed to. And then the jaw. I can't wait. Now the jaw, it's kind of weird how DO3D did this, because they leave these hooks for this, but there's nothing for the jaw to go on to, so the jaw just kind of like sits there. So I do have some little magnets that I'm probably gonna have to put those magnets in there and then just make that snap in. I'm gonna have to do the same process for my Cyborg helmet as well. So I went to Home Depot and got like a little pack of those magnets there. So one challenge was to make sure that this fits, which it does. I'm very happy about that. The next challenge is gonna be to help and get this all settled and established. And the third and the biggest challenge, if I can figure out a way, is to make this open up a little. So stay tuned. This one is going to be fun. Getting closer. Obviously, I just have the duct tape in there just to hold everything together. I'm liking it. All right, so I just basically did my sanding process. That's gonna be 60 grit. I don't usually use. Usually I start off at a 180, but I went from 60 to 120 to 180 to 220. And you can see from sound and just from appearance as well that a lot of that stuff was knocked down. A big difference maker in your prints, definitely gonna be wet and dry sandpaper. I feel like that's like a magic eraser as far as like layer lines, because coming from like a 60 grit down, I do rinse the prop off. I do rinse the sandpaper off before using. I feel like there's still some like small particles that are still left there. So when you use the wet and dry sandpaper, it's kind of like it fills those little layer lines in with like the small dust and particles. So that's definitely helpful. So from this stage, I'm gonna hit it with some primer and then see what I have to do as far as like bondo and finish. So I'm probably not gonna take this off for a while. This is amazing. So as you guys can see, I did a couple different things, or I should say I learned a couple different things with doing this helmet. Now, if you've seen my page, you know that this is actually the second time that I've done this Taskmaster helmet. So as you can see, this one's a little old. It's still fixable. It's a little soldering. But the first things first is the color. So this color, as far as the blue and as far as the metallic, you can even see my paint job has gotten better. I just felt like I wasn't dark enough. That's the same color that I used on the Bane mask, the same color that I used on that one, and I forget what else, but I just think those two. But I didn't really like that. I didn't think it looked realistic enough. As well as the metallic. I felt like most of my metallics come out a bit too bright. So as you've seen, I gave this a different approach with using the graphite powder. And that made a difference, not only with the metallic, but you can see during the video that I actually had some metallic in the cheek. And painting over that with the black, it was super easy. This is just one coat. It's like it absorbed the paint, the acrylic paint, it just absorbed it. So that really came out decent. I do have magnets on the jaw. Just kind of snap everything and hold everything in place. So that was actually my first time trying that. And that came out pretty good. Same tint that I use always, 5% window tint. This file is actually from Thingiverse this time. And I'm actually going to be doing this again because this file actually doesn't have a lot of the detail that the helmet has in the movie. Everything in the mask is accurate. It's just like the little bumps that you see on the helmet. So I have to do this again just to incorporate that. And as you can see, both of the earpieces didn't come out perfectly, or the sides didn't come out perfectly. So I had to cut one of the earpieces down. So just to make this absolutely perfect, I'm gonna do this again, this time using the DO3D file. And now again, since doing this, I have enough practice to where I feel comfortable to making that one look amazing as well. But this one's definitely a keeper for now. Just a sneak peek for my next video. So definitely stay tuned, guys. As always, I'm working on something new every weekend, or printing something new, trying something different. I'm now bringing electronics as well. So if this video helped you, or if you like this video, definitely hit the like button and the share button, because you never know who else it may help. And definitely subscribe and then hit the bell button, so that way when you know, you always know when my next prints are coming out. It's BZ Comics, guys. As always, God bless. Take care.